The parents who feel the most guilt are not, on average, the ones doing the most damage. They are the ones paying the most attention. That distinction sounds simple. It is not simple. And by the end of this video, it is going to be very hard to unknow. This video is not going to tell you that you're doing amazing. It is not going to tell you that you're trying your best, and that's enough. Those things may be true, but that's not why you're here. You're here because the feeling won't stop. And somewhere beneath the guilt is a question you haven't been able to answer. What does it actually mean that you feel this way? That's what this video is for. Here is what chronic parental guilt actually feels like from the inside. It is not dramatic. It doesn't arrive with a clear event, a clear cause, a clear moment you can point to. It is atmospheric. It is the low hum underneath an ordinary Tuesday. You made dinner. You helped with homework. You got through bedtime without anything catastrophic happening. And you still ended the day feeling like you failed. Not failed in a specific nameable way. Failed in the diffuse, ungraspable way that is somehow worse because you can't argue with it, can't locate it, can't fix what you can't find. And so it settles into the background. It becomes the air inside the house of your inner life. You breathe it in so consistently that you stop noticing it's there until something spikes it. A moment you raised your voice, a look on your child's face that you caused. A sentence that came out of your mouth that you recognized as belonging to someone else's house a long time ago. And when those moments happen, the guilt doesn't just spike, it speaks. It says something specific. It says, this is who you are, not this is what you did. Not this is a hard moment you had, this is who you are. That is the verdict. And the verdict is what makes the guilt unbearable. Not the feeling itself, but the interpretation the feeling arrives with. The interpretation that says the feeling is proof. Proof of what you feared most. Proof that the gap between the parent you are and the parent you want to be is not a gap you're crossing. It's a gap that defines you. Here is the question this video is going to sit with. What if the interpretation is wrong? Not wrong in a comforting, dismissive way. Wrong in a precise, mechanical way. Wrong in a way that changes what the guilt is actually for. There is a thing that happens when someone develops a strong value system around something they care about deeply. The stronger the values, the more acutely they feel the gap between where they are and where they want to be. This is not a parenting phenomenon. It is a human one. The more you care about honesty, the more ashamed you feel when you shade the truth. The more you care about kindness, the more it costs you when you are unkind. The more you care about the kind of parent you want to be, the more it registers internally every time you fall short. This is not evidence of failure. This is the mechanism of conscience. And conscience is not evenly distributed. Research on parental guilt consistently shows something that tends to surprise people when they first encounter it. The parents who report the highest levels of guilt also tend to score highest on measures of warmth, responsiveness, and attachment security. Not because guilt makes them better parents, but because the same attunement that makes them a more present parent is the same attunement that makes them exquisitely aware of every moment they did not show up the way they wanted to. The sensitivity runs in both directions. You feel your child more fully when you are connected to them, and you feel your failures more fully for exactly the same reason. Now here is where the internal objection usually arrives, and it deserves to be named directly because it is a fair one. This sounds like the kind of thing someone says to make me feel better. Guilt is guilt. It doesn't mean I'm a good parent. It just means I can't turn it off. That objection is not wrong. Feeling guilty does not automatically make anyone a good parent. The mechanism is more specific than that. What the guilt is tracking is not your quality as a parent. What the guilt is tracking is the gap and your awareness of it. And awareness of the gap is the first and non-negotiable condition for the gap to close. You cannot close a gap you cannot see. The parents who see it most clearly are, by definition, the ones who feel it most acutely. This is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is the actual structure of how conscience works. So now the question that has been building since the beginning of this video, what does the parent who feels no guilt actually look like? Not the parent who has done the work and arrived somewhere steadier. That is a different thing entirely. The parent who simply does not feel the guilt, who loses it on a Wednesday and moves on by Thursday morning without the inventory, without the 3 a.m. list, without the low hum. That parent is not necessarily kinder. That parent is not necessarily calmer. That parent is, in many cases, simply less aware of the gap. Not because they have closed it, because they are not watching it. And a gap that is not watched is a gap that does not close. This is not a judgment of those parents. It is a description of a mechanism. The presence of guilt, the specific, uncomfortable, low-grade guilt that brought you to this video, is not the problem. It is evidence that you are watching. Evidence that the gap between who you are and who you want to be is not invisible to you. Evidence that your values are intact, even when your behavior doesn't match them. And here is the thing that deserves to be said as precisely as possible, because it is the thing this entire video has been building toward. The problem is not that you feel like a bad parent. The problem is that you have been using that feeling as a verdict, when it was always functioning as a compass. A verdict says, this is who you are. A compass says, this is where your attention is needed. One closes the door. The other points somewhere. The guilt has been pointing somewhere this whole time. The pain of carrying it has not been because it was confirming your worst fear. It has been because you were treating a compass like a verdict. And a compass that is read as a verdict is the worst possible use of the most important information you have. If this reframe landed somewhere real, if something in you shifted and you want to take it further in a structured way, there is a 7-day journal in the description built specifically for this. Not spiritual bypassing. Not toxic positivity. A daily 5-minute practice that interrupts the guilt loop by working with what the guilt is actually tracking. It is called the Guilt Loop Reset, and the link is below. So what actually changes tonight? Not everything. That is not what this video promised. But one thing can shift, and one thing is enough. The shift is this. When the guilt arrives, as it will, possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow morning, the question is not, what does this say about me? The question is, what is this pointing toward? Those are not the same question. The first question sends you into the inventory. The 3 a.m. list, running backwards, cataloging every moment you got it wrong, with no exit and no instruction. The second question is smaller and more useful. It asks, what specific moment is this responding to? What did you wish had gone differently? And, the part that matters most, is there anything that can be done about that tonight? Sometimes the answer is yes. A repair is possible. Not a grand repair, not a conversation that resolves everything. A small repair, going back in and sitting on the edge of the bed, saying, earlier tonight I was sharper than I wanted to be. I want you to know that wasn't about you. That is a compass being used correctly. The guilt pointed to the rupture. The rupture pointed to the repair. The repair is what closes the gap. Not perfectly, not permanently, but by one specific increment, tonight. And sometimes the answer is no, the moment is past. The child is asleep. There is nothing to do right now except notice that the guilt is telling you something accurate, that you have values, that you care, that you are watching, and put it down until morning. Not dismiss it, not resolve it, just set it down. A compass does not need to be gripped at all times. It needs to be read when direction is needed and put in your pocket when you are already standing still. This is not a small distinction. It is, in fact, the difference between guilt that destroys and guilt that builds. The feeling is the same. What changes is the relationship to it. And the relationship to it is something that can change. Not all at once, not through willpower, but through the slow work of reading the compass correctly, one specific moment at a time. If you want to take that work somewhere concrete, the 7-day journal in the description is built for exactly that. Link is there. And also in the pinned comment. What is the moment the guilt usually hits hardest? And what do you do with it when it does? You came into this video carrying something you have been carrying for a long time. A feeling that has been speaking in a very specific language. The language of verdict. This is who you are. This is proof. This is what you feared. What this video has offered is not a different feeling. The guilt will still arrive. It will still spike on the hard nights. It will still be there on the ordinary Tuesdays when nothing catastrophic happened, and you still end the day feeling like you fell short. That is not going to disappear because you watched a video. What can change, and what the rest of this channel is about, is what you do with it when it arrives. A compass is only useful if you know that's what it is. If you don't know, you carry it like a weight. Something heavy, something that speaks in accusations. Something you cannot put down because you are afraid of what it means that you're carrying it at all. But when you know what it is, The weight does not disappear. It becomes something you can use. The guilt has been telling you something accurate this whole time. Not that you are failing, that you are aware, that you are watching, that the gap between who you are and who you want to be is visible to you, which is the only condition under which it can close. You are not the parent who doesn't notice. You are the parent who notices everything, including every moment it didn't go the way you wanted. That is not a curse. That is the whole foundation. Not perfect, not healed, but awake. And awake is enough to work with. Awake is, in fact, the only place the work can begin.